Hi, my name is Jessica Graham, and this is my interpersonal communication project for Human Services 508. I learned a lot in this class, and I look forward to sharing with you some of the things that I learned and how I hope to apply them in the workplace, with family, with friendships. I kind of came into this class with a certain idea of what communication was like, and through the materials and the presentations, I've learned a lot of my preconceived notions were a little bit off. So let's get started. Um, First, I'm going to just like what my overarching goal is, the things that I hope to improve on, things I'd like to see myself become better at. Also, my background and my behavioral blend and how those impact the way I communicate today, and also how I listen. So there's a lot of those like ingrained behaviors that need to be trained out, and also some of the things that I'm good at, and what the assessment kind of said, no, hey, expound upon this. You do well with this. So being able to learn a little bit about myself was also really interesting throughout this course. Um, Also, the potential barriers, things that get in the way of good communication, turning it into poor communication. We'll touch on some of those. Noise pollution, things that get in the way internally as well as externally, and how that can, hinder effective communication as well. And lastly, my plan of action, steps I plan on taking in order to see these goals come into fruition. So first we'll start with just a few definitions. The first one is, what is communication? And Stewart defines it as, the goal of communication is dialogue, in which one person speaks and the listener replies in such a way to acknowledge the conversation and expound. As basic as that is, that was very insightful to me. A dialogue, I have to listen as well as talk. I can talk, but in order to be an effective communicator, I need to be an effective listener. Also, the verbal and the nonverbal of communication. Not only what is said, but how it's said. Talking with parents at the university, I work in the housing office. Sometimes you don't know these people, and it is hard to pick up on what are their nonverbal cues. As them sitting back in their chair, is that them receiving information, or is that them being offended? And just picking up on those little nuances that they do in order to be a better communicator to them and deliver the message in such a way that they will receive it. Again, also the verbal, what is said. I think sometimes people will say things with the opposite face and how those contradict themselves. So just being an attentive communicator and listener. So, interpersonal communication, according to James Stewart, communication that happens when the people involved talk and listen in ways that maximize the presence of the personal. So again, remembering that there's someone else involved in this conversation. As much as I'd like to jump in and say something ahead of you, I have to respect you as a person and what you have to say, and also willingly listen. The Stewart text also kind of gives that picture of what communication is breathing, the inhaling and the exhaling. I'm a great exhaler. I can talk and talk and talk, but inhaling is probably the most important part. In fact, it is the most important part. And the text says that we should focus more on that in order to take accurate information to give an appropriate response, and kind of digging and digging and digging into what that person's saying so we know exactly what they're saying and not assuming anything. Then the exhale, again, respecting that person, asking open-ended questions, kind of still treating them as the most important part of the dialogue and of the conversation. Overarching goal. My overarching goal is to become a better and more effective listener by purposing my attention to the speaker, willing myself to understand the verbal and the nonverbal, and respond in a way that will be received by the other person. Again, willing myself. I'm easily distracted. I could go off on tangents, as well as, be distracted by everything in the room. So willing myself to be attentive to that person is something that I really want to work on. Enlarging the conversation is defined as maintaining an open and honest line of communication that allows each participant to be both seen and heard. It creates a more effective line of communication by utilizing methods and techniques that maximize the benefits of both talking and listening. And when I read this in the book, the first thing I kind of thought of was like a rolling pin, and how everything's even. It's getting bigger, it's expanding, as well as giving everyone else an opportunity to talk and listen. So my background, I grew up in a very large family with a lot of different personalities. So that already kind of being born to that kind of dynamic, you have to learn how to talk and listen all at the same time. And it was a boatload of fun, and definitely worked to my benefit. I was homeschooled during high school, and this was I really wanted to work and save money, so my mom allowed me to stay home. I would do school in the morning, kind of be on my own for that one, and then go off to work. I am single and working full time, so I have a pretty large group of friends. Um, in the workplace, I am with my colleagues, 9 hours a day. So keeping lines of communication open in that dynamic is also, really important to me as a person, and out of respect for my bosses and other colleagues. I graduated with my undergrad a couple of years back in health promotion. Looking to narrow in on that a little bit more, I knew I wanted to do something in the community that, enriches people's lives. Originally, I thought that was health, and now I'm thinking it might be something else. So I started pursuing my master's in human services with addiction recovery. Um, right now, I teach a art class in the inner city, and that is definitely a community that I really, really want to engage. Whether that's through art or counseling, or whether it is through addiction recovery, it's definitely an area in a field that I do want to stay in. It's definitely kind of enraptured my heart. So. Throughout this course, we had to take a DISC personality profile test. DISC is each letter stands for a different type of temperament. So D is like the dominating, domineering, dynamic. I is inspiring, very engaging, likes to be entertaining. And S is kind of like steady, laid back, goes with the flow. And C is the conscientious one, the one that likes detail, and the one that's usually very intellectual and analyzes everything. My mom actually gave us as kids this test in order to kind of, craft our curriculum around our personality. So all of our curriculum was really different. I liked hands-on, while my little brother liked to read. So it was really cool. So being able to learn more about this was really interesting. What was expected of me in the test was an I, and that was pretty accurate. I'm an ID. So during conversation, I'll look a lot like this, very animated. This is a candid picture. Very animated, really, involved in the conversation. But during anything that has to do with tasks, I'm usually very deliberate, a little bit competitive. And having those two traits kind of butt heads a lot. Things can get out of hand. So learning how to temper that and, willfully step back and calm myself down, because I'm usually very energetic. So it was really interesting. I also took an interpersonal communication assessment, and I scored an 88 out of 100. And while I was a little bit impressed with the number, I know what I need to work on. Being an ID, I like to have my say. I like to be heard. I like to be the front man, and learning that that's not always received well. I understand. And knowing that a lot of it is selfish pride, and having to humble myself and step aside and let someone else talk, or someone else take the spotlight, and being a listener. I know that is a struggle for me, and it's something that I do continue to work on. But oddly enough, my biggest downfall from this quiz was being able to explain myself. And I can see that because I rush through conversation. Always like 8 steps ahead of myself, so explaining it to people and not having them catch on can be really frustrating for me. So learning how to slow down is really important. Noise pollution, anything that hinders empathetic listening. So outside, what's going on? Who's that just walked by the door? That's really hard for me. Internal, what am I going to eat later? Wow, she really moves her hands a lot. Constantly distracted. So being able to focus in on that is something that I've trained myself to do. That's kind of what the idea of noise pollution. It can be internal and external. Barrier 1 for me, self-disclosure. What's appropriate to say, what's appropriate not to say. Being honest, though, and being able to communicate how I really do feel about something and my real thoughts without compromising that, and kind of like sticking to my guns a little bit. That can be difficult. Also focusing on the present. You don't have to talk about things in the past, kind of what's at hand and what we're dealing with and what's appropriate to self-disclose. Barrier 2 for me is biased listening. I like to peg people. Like, I think I know what you're going to say. I can see what your temperament's like. I know, an idea of where you're going with this. And sometimes I'm completely wrong. So having open ears and open eyes to who a person is and what they want to say and their thoughts and ideas, whether this is a personal friend or someone I'm meeting for the first time. Barrier 3, physical factors. Stressed, hungry, tired, and irritable. Not a good time to have a conversation. And for me, I like to have things done and out of the way. So learning that sometimes I'm not in the best way to have a conversation. That's also really important, learning to pick up on those red flags before delving into something that could potentially be very poor communication. My plan of action. Learning to dispel or overrule noise pollution in our lives is imperative in order to become an effective listener, and that's out of the Stewart textbook. So purposely positioning myself maybe with my back towards the door, so I'm not always looking at who's coming in, looking someone in the eye, tell them, listen, I'm really distracted today. If you could just, make sure I'm listening, ask me questions. I appreciate that. I want them to be as involved in the conversation that I am, and sometimes that means a group effort. Purposely eliminating those distractions. Again, like I said, back to the door, TV off, music off, maybe pull over to the side if I'm driving. And also saying what I mean and meaning what I say. Sometimes I can fabricate my words and put things how I really feel in different light. Like if someone asks me if I'm doing okay, oh yeah, I'm fine, and kind of deflect. But really, I could be having kind of a conflict with that person and be able to bring those things up and talk about it openly and honestly. And also slow down. Take a breath. Listen to what they're saying. Take time to construct thoughts. And know that not everything is a rush. And being able to put down the task while I'm talking to someone. That's really, that might be the number one goal that I have. Because I see that with people that I work with in the office, and student workers will come in and talk to me, and I'll be on the computer and I'll be doing 8 things at one time when they need and deserve my 100% attention in that moment. So that's all I have for today's project. Again, I really enjoyed learning about myself, enjoy learning about communication, and I really do hope to improve on the things that I need to improve on. So thank you.